Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General. I'm pleased to be joining you from Victoria, located on the territory of the Algonquin-speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. Tonight's program is hosted by the British Columbia's Community Advisory Group on Extortion and supported by police of local jurisdiction and the BC Extortion Task Force. The extortion crisis continues to be our government's #1 public safety priority. Extortion threats and related acts of violence cause real fear for families, businesses, and the broader community. While police report that extortion cases have declined since January, work to combat extortion has not stopped. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to our policing and public safety partners with us today, who are working with great skill and dedication to bring extortionists to justice. Today, we are joined by the BC RCMP, the BC Extortion Task Force, the Surrey Police Service, the Abbotsford Police Department, the Delta Police Department, the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit, the Metro Vancouver Transit Police, and Canada Border Services Agency. Through recent arrests and removals from Canada, police and the Canada Border Services Agency are making meaningful progress in holding extortionists to account. We'll hear more about this shortly from enforcement partners. The province's approach has been guided by a commitment to strong, coordinated, and responsive action. This informed our establishment of the Community Advisory Group on Extortion to serve as an important connection between community and law enforcement. This group provides strategic advice to law enforcement, the BC Extortion Task Force, and government. It also ensures the communities are receiving clear, consistent, and timely information about safety, prevention, and available supports. The Community Advisory Group on Extortion is chaired by Paul Dadwell, a former RCMP superintendent and head of gang investigations with the Combined Forces Special Enforcement Unit, who will be our host this evening. This program will feature updates on the group's work to date and provide an opportunity for our partners to respond to questions from the community. This approach reflects our commitment to keeping the public informed with accurate, up-to-date information. I would like to thank the Community Advisory Group for its work over the past few months. Their efforts are an important part of our ongoing commitment to community safety. The province will continue to ensure that police have the tools they need to fight crime in our communities as we work to build a safer British Columbia for everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will now turn the floor over to Paul Dadwell.
Thank you, Minister, for your support. I'm speaking to you today from the territory of the Coast Salish people, including the Semiahmoo, Katsi, Coquitlam, Kwantlen, Kakite, and Tsawwassen First Nations. Before I start, I want to thank our media partners for covering this topic over the past year, for being supportive and allowing live airtime today. I'd like to thank Red FM, Connect FM, Swift FM, Omni and City TV, Sher Punjab, Prime Asia TV, and Sanjha TV. Thank you to the public who submitted questions. We've received countless questions and have tried to categorize them. And start asking them and presenting them questions. It's important I speak. Start asking them and presenting them questions. It's important I speak for 2 minutes on the Community Advisory Group. Why were we created? Who's on this team? And what have we done? I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Paul Dadwell. I was born and raised in the city of Surrey, and I spent 19 years policing in this community and province. I care, we care, the community cares, our advisory group cares. We all believe in the possibility of change. We believe in community and law enforcement system working together collaboratively. This was created, the advisory group, because there was a perception of the public that extortions aren't being taken as a priority. The minister and premier appointed the advisory group, and there was feelings by the public that there was a lack of coordination between agencies and a desire for public to get more meaningful communication. Our task was to meet the community, to meet victims, to share concerns with police and extortion task force, and provide recommendations to the minister on how we best remove ourselves from this crisis. So what have we done? We have had over 60 briefings in 3 months with all police forces, many times with CBSA, with FinTrack, with law societies, with notaries associations, with boards of trades, South Asian Business Association, and as I indicated, most importantly, victims' families. And through those 60 briefings, we have gained a lot of knowledge from the community. I would like to thank the advisory group. Your commitment to society is beyond gratitude. Baltej Dylan, thank you. You will translate at the end of this in Punjabi for our viewers that are listening online. I'd like to thank Harp Keela, Wally Opal, Ninu Kang, and Gary Begg for showing up to every committee meeting to date. To the community, to victims, your pain is real. We understand you're hurting. We know some of you have relocated. We know some of your lives have been affected and kids have been affected. That doesn't represent our peaceful and sovereign Canada that we will get back. What I also want you to know, what else is real, is the credible work of law enforcement and CBSA that is happening behind the scenes that you don't get to hear about. And I suspect after today's roundtable, you will have more insight into what is actually happening. Before I start with the questions, I want to comment on a partner of ours, Puneet Sandar, the vice president at the South Asian Business Association. She's heard from community. She knows the victims' families. And she was very responsive this morning, telling me that the shift in the public having trust is coming back. The work is translating to arrests. We need a sustained approach, and the approach is reassuring. Thank you, Puneet, for those positive words to our community. We will now start with Harj Sidhu, the chief of Delta Police Department. Harj, I've known you for over 20 years. You're South Asian. You were one of the first calls I gave when I took on this role. And I asked you, Harj, how did we get here? What happened? And I wanted your blunt perspective on how this actually started, and you gave it. I'd like you to share that with community.
So thank you for having me, Paul, and thank you for everyone for listening today. Yeah, I think extortion's, it's been a tactic that's been used by organized crime across the world and even in Canada for many years. Fear and intimidation to gain compliance from victims for payment of money. And often these criminals target individuals from their own community groups. As we know in Canada, over the last several years, we've had an increase in immigration to Canada, which includes many from India, international students and newcomers that are coming to this country for an opportunity and to make a better life for themselves. Unfortunately, because of those pathways, organized crime is sophisticated enough to be used those networks to be able to get their individuals here and establish criminal networks within Canada. And as we know, organized crime is always evolving. They're using technology to expand their reach across borders. So essentially the globalization of crime. They're using encrypted technology that's available to everyone now. They're coordinating, and that allows them to coordinate their operations from across borders. And they have the means for financial pathways to move the money once they obtain it from victims. And those same tactics for an organized crime now being able to use these tools are now doing that in Canada, and through threats, through shootings. Our South Asian businesses have come here, made a life for themselves, the individuals, and they've established successful businesses. And unfortunately, these organized crime people know that they do have money, so they become targets, because at the end of the day, this is all about profit motivated crime that they're doing. They're also have their networks here, but they're exploiting many of the newcomers that have come here, feel isolated, they have financial pressures, and they're being recruited very much like we have local vulnerable youth being recruited by organized crime here in our province and across this country. So I think that's what is kind of happening. So it's not a new crime, it's something that's been around for generations, but it's come here and it's allowed, with technology and the transnational abilities of organized crime, to be able to impact that here in our own communities. And that's what we're seeing over the last several years. And I just want to say that, this is an organized crime issue that's impacting the South Asian community. It's not a community issue itself, so that we can't lose sight of that.
Thanks, Harj. We'll be back to you in a bit. Next is Dwayne McDonald, the Deputy Commissioner of the BC RCMP. And Dwayne, you represent not only the task force, you represent the RCMP in BC, and for tonight's event, obviously, nationally. So we'll come back to you later more on the task force, because there was a lot of questions around that. But what's the latest intelligence, the data, telling us about extortion activity in this province right now?
Thanks, Paul. What we've seen lately at the beginning of this year until now is that there's an overall decrease in the amount of extortion-related activities that are occurring in British Columbia. We've seen this activity move across Canada, but right now in BC, we're experiencing not a lull, but a decrease. And I think this is directly attributable not only to the work of the Provincial Task Force, but the coordinated effort by all of the partners here that are on this call and others. We have had significant success in terms of charges laid, of removal of suspects leaving the province of their own volition. But we've also seen an incredible increase in cooperation from victims, from community, and an increased awareness of just how these crimes occur. So while we're experiencing some positive impact from the coordinated efforts, I think it's very important to recognize that a sustained, prolonged effort coordinated across all police agencies, not only municipal, provincial, federal, but if required, international, is going to be necessary to continue to see the success that we've seen. In fact, if you look at the national picture, since early 2025, or 24, pardon me, the RCMP stood up the National Coordination Support Team, is responsible for providing intelligence and linkages with all police agencies across the country. And what we've seen now is the mobility of our suspects, the interprovincial nature of our organized crime groups, their decentralized model, and that this extortion crime is replicable and can be copycatted anywhere across the country. We have guns, we have vehicles that move interprovincially, we have suspects for hire, we have encryption, as was previously noted, and we have things like the dark web. So these are all the trends that we're seeing, not only in British Columbia, but nationally. And so as a result, police agencies across the country gather. We have a nationally coordinated effort. We're meeting here in Edmonton on Friday, and we're sharing intelligence across police agencies, but also with the Criminal Intelligence Services of Canada, the CBSA, FinTrack, and federal policing to hit this problem nationwide.
Thank you, Dwayne, for highlighting that extortions are considerably down and the police are going to continue this sustained approach. Next, we have Norm Lipinski, the Surrey Police Chief. Norm, we know it's a national problem. It's a provincial problem, but in this province, Surrey is the epicenter. The public often gets to only see news releases on arrests. And I know you've been out there engaging with community considerably. The Community Advisory Group was very impressed with the briefing of Project Assurance. Can you advise us what preventative strategies are being deployed that the public doesn't see on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, great question. Thank you, Paul. All agencies have their version of Project Assurance, and we determined early on that you have the investigative stream, and that carries on with the good work of the men and women on the front line and the provincial task force, making arrests and so forth. But there's another stream, and that has to do with prevention, disruption, and victim care. And so one of the things that we do is that we deploy members during the daytime at high-risk locations, but a lot more police officers at nighttime, specifically between midnight and 6 in the morning, to these high-risk locations. And what does that mean? That means that there are some plainclothes officers out there overnight. That means there's a lot of uniformed officers out there. And they go and do checks in the residences or the businesses, and they check them many times throughout the night. Sometimes at certain locations, we are there overnight parked out front. And that is to give that reassurance, that public trust that we are there for the community, that we protect the community. We also have cameras, and some of the cameras you may see, they're trailer cameras, but we have a lot of covert cameras because we can then get descriptions of anybody that may be suspicious, or we get license plate numbers, etc. So that is very, very important. The last piece of this, Paul, is the victim care. All agencies are really concerned about the effects of this on the family. Even just receiving a threat, we understand and appreciate the fear, the anxiety. And so our victim care team goes out and talks to and puts together safety plans, and also just is that contact, a phone call away. We update safety plans. We ensure that we have the right information from the family, all members of the family, anybody else that may be associated to that house or business. It's that extra step to care for the community. And that's what Project Assurance is all about. We also were fortunate that we disrupted some activities that led to some arrests. And so we're out there every night, and we have some people out there during the daytime as well, checking in on all the residences and the businesses. Thank you for that question.
Appreciate it, Norm. We'll be back to you shortly. Next is Colin Watson, the Chief of Abbotsford Police Department. Colin, when I took on this role, I called you and I said, look, there's people in the community that want our own community, our own businesses to stop paying. And you were very blunt and honest about it. You said, we want police to stop paying as well. So if you could walk us through what your views are on members of the community paying extortionists and what that's actually going to do to this crisis.
Yeah, certainly, Paul. Thanks for the question. Plain and simple, our recommendation is to not pay extortionists. As Chief Sidhu mentioned earlier, part of the reason why these crime types are successful is that they're profitable. They're putting dollars into the pockets of these extortionists. And while I understand why victims may feel that the quickest way to deal with an extortion threat may be to pay an extortionist to ensure the safety of their family, to ensure the safety of themselves or their businesses, more often than not, paying an extortion will ultimately lead to another request or an even larger request. So while it may seem like that's a simple solution to move this forward and put this issue behind, it's very unlikely that that would be the case. There's also a broader consideration, and that is to the point of this issue being profitable for extortionists. The more individuals in the community that are paying extortionists, the more likely that this is going to continue. So we certainly encourage folks not to do that, not to pay the extortionists. Contact us right away. Work with us on our overall response. Work with us on a safety plan for you and your family. And we will do our very best as we've done right from the beginning.
Appreciate it, Colin. Back to you shortly. Next, we have Nina Patel, a Regional Director at the Canadian Border Services Agency. Nina, you're obviously South Asian. We've had chats in your office, very open perspective from your end. There's a common theme in the community about let's deport our way out of this problem and send people back. And you've had some very amazing thoughts around that, very honest thoughts around that. Can you provide us an update regarding deportations and the removals connected to organized crime and extortion investigations?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. As of May 7th, the CBSA has opened over 446 immigration investigations into foreign nationals that are suspected to be involved or linked to extortion. These individuals may be inadmissible for any immigration-related offenses ranging from non-compliance of their immigration conditions for serious criminality and organized criminality. To date, the CBSA has issued 118 removal orders and removed 55 people from Canada. And so of that, in the Pacific region here, we have issued 52 removal orders and removed 33 individuals from Canada.
Thanks, Nina. You're very progressive, and we thank you for your efforts. Back to Harj from Delta. Harj, the community has said and felt legitimately that the police were slow to respond, that public institutions, the system, societal programs were slow to respond. As an ex-police officer, I understand why we have to keep up, why we have to learn new trends and apply new techniques and evolve as we learn. But not everyone understands that. And so a pointed question for you is, have we developed, have we united, and can you explain some of the delays?
Thank you for that question, Paul. And I can appreciate, obviously, the public's concerns because they're wondering what are the police doing and how are they keeping them safe. But I do believe police from the onset, we did respond. Most of the police of jurisdictions did. There were incidents happening across this country that often were isolated in nature. So it takes a bit of time to figure out, okay, what's happening back, say, in Ontario or Alberta that's starting to occur here. And as we talked about, that I shared earlier, these organized crime groups are using sophisticated technology, modern technology to communicate. So they're not the traditional way that people are communicating, meeting in restaurants and businesses where we can keep an eye on them. A lot of this stuff is covertly done that poses challenges for how do we have access to that information to see how these individuals are communicating. And then, a lot of them, as we determine later on, we're moving across the country. So many of us know who the individuals in our communities are or in our region are that are involved in organized crime. But when these individuals are moving from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, we're a big country and it takes some time to have that coordination occur. And also having, the tools to be investigating the nature of the crime when we talk about, like I said, transnational crime and individuals communicating from halfway across the world using WhatsApp and a lot of these other social media platforms. It's not that simple for us to be able to get that information from the service providers. It's quite complex. And again, local POJs aren't designed to do transnational crime, but that's what ended up happening and landing in our doorstep. So we do work closely with our national partners, obviously the RCMP. So it did take a bit of time for us to play catch up. I heard the comment of Chief Watson had said about trust from the community as well. There had to be us building trust with the community. If they were the shooting ones, yes, we're responding because they were very profile, but the ones that were more threats related, people weren't sure, should we go to the police, shouldn't we? What is the police going to help us able to do? Are they going to keep us safe? So a lot of the things that Chief Lipinski talked about, building those relationships, showing that we are here, we are going to support them, we are going to put safety plans in place. And so over time, I think as nationally police leaders started talking, we started developing linkages and patterns and profiles that eventually led to all of the stuff that Deputy Commissioner McDonald talked about, the Extortion Task Force in British Columbia, that all of my partners here have people there. We have weekly meetings amongst each other. What are best practices? What are intelligence? As Deputy McDonald just mentioned, we're meeting in Edmonton later this week. We met her about a month ago here in Surrey from police leaders from many of the jurisdictions being impacted by this so that we can have those immediate open lines of communication, let alone all the work that our teams are doing on a daily basis to address this issue. And, as we know, a lot of times things are happening behind the scenes that aren't visible to the public because it takes time. We're building up that evidence and conducting those investigations, trying to draw the linkages. And I'm seeing the fruits of those labor now by some of the arrests that are being made, working with CBSA and our partners of looking at other pathways that are lawful, legal, in order to look at potentially deportation, if that makes sense. So I do believe there's a lot of coordination and intelligence that's going on. Did it take us a bit of time to play catch up? Absolutely. Organized crime, they evolve quickly and policing has to do that as well. Another area, I want to thank the provincial, federal governments, our local municipal governments that they've been on board. What do you need? And we've had numerous meetings to get some of the legislative tools to be able to investigate these transnational crimes. So it takes a bit of time, but all those things are coming together that's starting to give us momentum.
Thanks for being very transparent. Next, Dwayne, back to the RCMP. There was a lot of questions we received on the task force. So to summarize, the questions were related to how are the agencies coordinating intelligence, how frequently do the partners collaborate, how is the task force working, and approximately how many resources, if you can comment without exposing the operational security, are in this task force.
Well, thanks, Paul. And I think Chief Sidhu hit on some of this, but the task force has been up and running in this current format since September of 2025. It's made up of 40 full-time personnel from a variety of police agencies. So all the police agencies that are here on this call, the Surrey Police Service, Abbotsford, Delta, Transit Police, behind the scenes that are tackling these crimes. Currently, participants have introduced to the task force about 36 investigative files that are actively being pursued right now, with many more in the queue. The task force focuses on the higher tier level of extortion groups those that are committing more than one offense and maybe multi-jurisdictional in their approach. We've been successful in receiving charges on 9 individuals to date, and we are continuing to advance charges in many areas.
Thank you very much, Dwayne. Norm, back to Surrey. I actually have 2 questions for you, cognizant of time. I will start with question number 1. Anytime there's a shooting, and this applies even when I hear it and I wake up in the news, people first think, is it extortion related? And they make the assumption. What can police do, or what are police doing early in the investigation to advise the public on whether they believe in the early stages if it's extortion related or not?
Yes, thank you very much. Very good question. So when we get a call of a shooting, of course, our frontline members respond, but also the duty officer, senior officer, responds to the scene as well. And at that time, we do make an assessment and check against our database whether this residence or business was subject of an extortion. And as soon as we have that information, that's turned over into what's called a briefing note. And the senior management is notified of this. And then our communications people are notified of it. And so that's very important. And it usually happens within 12 hours that we put out a press release of there was a shooting and it's extortion related. We recognize that it's important for the community to know whether it's related to extortions or perhaps it could be some other crime activity. And that way we inform and go through the community, of course, looking for witnesses and asking anybody for their dash cam videos or any other videos. So we try and get it out there as soon as possible to notify the community, but also to get that intelligence or possible evidence to come back to us to further the investigation.
Okay, thank you. And my second question for you is Surrey Police have taken a pretty progressive approach with the releasing of names and photos. And there's obviously different views on how that could affect, a court investigation. But this question is detailed, but I'm going to read it out verbatim because I think it's important. Our businesses and homes have been targeted, and we are living in constant fear and concern for our safety, family, employees, and businesses. We need to know why the people involved in these crimes are not being publicly identified as suspects. Their names and photos need to be published, regardless of the fact that these people have been deported. These culprits do not deserve privacy, and if they've committed crimes, then they deserve to be named publicly. The governments have a mandate and support from the people for such information release, and these laws that protect the criminals need to be changed. If the present government is not capable of making such legal amendments, then they should publicly state their position, let the voters decide if they will accept or reject government policy.
It's probably one of the most common questions that I receive. And we have to be very cognizant that we have to adhere to the law in Canada. And I'm speaking specifically to the criminal code and all the evidentiary requirements of the criminal code. So we cannot, just because we arrest somebody, put the picture out there. There has to be a legitimate investigative reason to do so. So the Surrey Police Service and other agencies have walked through the need or the investigative steps that may be required to go through before we release the photo. And what we're specifically looking for is to move that investigation forward. And what I mean by that is by releasing the photos, we want people to call in and say, I know who that individual was friends with, I know who that person talked to, or I seen him at a certain location. That is very valuable information for us. And in the past, when we have released the photos, we have gotten a number of calls that have moved the investigations forward. But we go through this assessment with our legal counsel and walk through the steps to ensure the legitimacy of the reason for releasing the photo, and that is to further the investigation. When you further the investigation, it enhances public safety if we can get to that individual with better evidence or lead us to another file, lead us to another individual where there's criminality, or perhaps it would be subject to removal from Canada. So it all tied in. Recognizing this is a crisis, we continue to treat it very, very seriously, and our partners across the country do so as well. And we have to all work together to ensure that we leave no stone unturned, and this is just one other avenue.
Excellent, Norm. Colin from Abbotsford, a common theme that families have approached us on, and this doesn't apply just extortions, heard this for decades, is why can't the police provide security and protection for me outside my house?
Sure, thanks, Paul. Yeah, that's a common question. And one of the key things that we do as a police service when we go and meet with victims is to walk through a safety plan. And one of the things that our investigators will do is that they will consider the individual circumstances of that threat. Was there an incident of violence that was associated? What was the mechanism by which the threat was received? Consider the specific circumstances of that victim, their family. Do they have property or businesses in other jurisdictions or nearby? And they'll walk through the planning process with that victim and with that family. Make suggestions for them about what types of things that they can do to elevate or ensure their safety. They'll also talk with them about the things that the police can do. Sometimes it is increasing patrols in the neighborhood. Sometimes I think Chief Lipinski mentioned public safety cameras. There are a whole variety of things that we can consider doing depending on the circumstances of the case. We've learned a lot as this extortion crisis has moved forward about what are some of the features that we are looking for that we believe might elevate overall risk. And a key component is for us to work really, really closely with victims and their families so that they can feel safe and know that they've got the police behind them. The other piece that I will mention is that we will routinely connect victims with our local victim service offices. While we are focusing on the criminal investigation, the public safety components, our victim service teams can also work with the families and the victims to help address some of the impacts of receiving this type of threat and being a victim of this type of crime. So we're going to continue to do that work and work with victims and make sure that they're safe and dedicate the resources that we can to assist them.
Thanks, Colin. I think it's important to recognize too that the province has given specialized funding for those victim workers, which is a very important part of this. There's 2 questions left, and they are directed to Nina Patel from Customs CBSA. Nina, what's the role of your team in the BC Extortion Task Force? It's a key role. I've heard from many police leaders that they believe your team is very progressive. They're boots on the ground. They're fully integrated, and a lot of results are coming. And truthfully, I didn't even know this before taking on this role. So if you could walk the public through how CBSA works embedded in the Extortion Task Force, please.
Okay, thank you. CBSA overall plays a very important role when it comes to combating many different and diverse public safety threats that include organized crime, including extortion. So our broad mandate allows us to work with our law enforcement partners to disrupt these criminal organizations, especially if convictions may not be feasible or be able to be pursued at that time. So by deconflicting on individual cases with our partner agencies, we're able to determine what's the best course of action, whether this is pursuing convictions or removal from Canada. So how do we actually do this? So by having the provincial task force, their teams are able to be integrated, be able to discuss cases, be able to prioritize what's coming up. And by when a case is identified, CBSA will do an investigation on immigration status, and that allows us to be able to use that information to arrest, detain, and ultimately remove those individuals if that decision is made that we will go that way collectively in partnership with our police partners. I just would like to emphasize, though, that criminal matters always take precedence over immigration, meaning CBSA, we will not remove individuals from Canada unless criminal matters have been resolved. CBSA nationally, we continue to prioritize extortion-related crimes within the work we're doing. And while we've shown a lot of positive outcomes that you spoke to, we're also learning a lot. And we do recognize there's still a lot more that we can do and we need to do that incorporates the community, the police partners, legislative and policy changes. And, you know, Hart spoke to it earlier, the complexity of these networks continue to evolve, which is why it's absolutely critical that we continue to learn from each other and evolve as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Last question. Nina, why doesn't CBSA publicly post photographs of individuals who have been deported?
Yeah, you know, simply put, I know this is very frustrating for many. However, a person's immigration information is considered personal information and is protected under the Privacy Act. Strict criteria is used to look at them, and it's not that CBSA is adverse to it. We do put it through a process in order to see what we can and cannot release to the public, and if it meets that criteria, we are very much open to being able to do that.
Excellent, thank you. Before I turn it over to Baltej, who will translate and summarize this in Punjabi for a few minutes, I would like to conclude by saying this is a national issue. Lessons have been learned, wisdom has been gained, systems have clearly adapted, and teams are united. In our view, the real victory isn't when police just make more arrests or when we make more deportations, although that will build confidence. The real victory is when we've transformed this from a problem we're fighting into a solution we're building together, community and police, all layers of government, not just provincially, but nationally. Thank you. Baltej, I'll pass it over to you to summarize in Punjabi, please.
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਪੌਲ ਮੈਂ ਇਸ ਵਕਤ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਜੋ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਚੀਫ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਜੋ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਂਝੀਆਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਥੋੜ੍ਹੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝੀਆਂ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਸਮਾਂ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਮੋਟੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਸਾਂਝੀਆਂ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਤੇ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਮਝਾਇਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਇੱਕ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਐਡਵਾਈਜ਼ਰੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਬਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਸੂਬੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰੀ ਹੈ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਨੀਨਾ ਕਰੀਗਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਐਡਵਾਈਜ਼ਰੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਬਣਾਈ ਗਈ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਟਾਸਕ ਫੋਰਸ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸਤੰਬਰ ਤੋਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾਰੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਚੀਫ ਹਨ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਸਮਾਂ ਕੱਢਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅਪਡੇਟ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਕੀ ਕੁਛ ਅੱਗੇ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕੀ ਕੁਛ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਕੀ ਕੁਛ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਥੋੜ੍ਹੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝੀਆਂ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਜਨਵਰੀ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਫਰੌਤੀ ਕੇਸਿਸ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਥੋੜੇ ਘਟ ਗਏ ਹਨ ਇਹਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਹਟਾ ਦੇਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਹੋਰ ਜਾਰੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਰੱਖਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਪਰ ਇਹ ਤੋਂ ਇਹ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਕੰਮ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਇਨਵੈਸਟੀਗੇਸ਼ਨ ਜੋ ਕਾਰਵਾਈ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਵਕਤ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਫਰਕ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਚੀਫ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਸਮਝਾਇਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਫਰਕ ਤਾਂ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਸਹਾਇਤਾ ਮਿਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਕੰਪਲੇਂਟ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਫਰੌਤੀ ਕੇਸ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਵੱਧਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੀ ਇਨਵੈਸਟੀਗੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਵੱਧਦੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਸੋ ਉਹਦਾ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਫਰਕ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਸਕਸੈਸ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਗ੍ਰਿਫਤਾਰੀਆਂ ਹੋ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਤਿਵੇਂ ਸਾਡੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਥੋੜੀ ਆਸ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਹਾਂ ਬਾਕੀ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੇਸਿਸ ਨੇ ਜਿਹਨੇ ਪਿੱਛੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੰਪਲੇਂਟ ਆਈ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਕੇਸਿਸ ਨੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਵੱਧਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਸਿਰਫ BC ਦੀ ਜਾਂ ਸਰੀ ਦੀ ਜਾਂ ਵੈਂਕੂਵਰ ਜਾਂ ਡੈਲਟਾ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਮੁਲਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫੈਲੀ ਹੋਈ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਸੋ ਜਦੋਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਪਾਸ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਰ ਪੀਸਿਸ ਜੋ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਵੱਧਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਇਨਵੈਸਟੀਗੇਸ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਮੁਲਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਵੱਧ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਸੋ ਕਈ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਰਤੋਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਕਸੈਸ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਅੱਗਿਓਂ ਹੋਰ ਗ੍ਰਿਫਤਾਰੀਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਪੱਖੋਂ ਹਨ ਇੱਕ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਮਿਲੀ ਹੈ ਹੋਗੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਥੋੜੀ ਜੋ ਇਨਵੈਸਟੀਗੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਵਧੀਆ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਬਾਕੀ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਆਪਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਫੋਰਸਿਸ ਨੇ, ਹੁਣ ਥੋੜਾ ਚਿਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਐਕਸਟੋਰਸ਼ਨ ਫਰੋਤੀ ਕੇਸ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਜੋ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਬਦਲੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, ਕੋਆਰਡੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ RCMP ਵੱਲੋਂ, ਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਕੋਆਰਡੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ, ਉਹਦਾ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਫਰਕ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਹੁਣ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਗ੍ਰਿਫਤਾਰੀਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਨੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੇਸ ਅੱਗੇ ਆਏ ਹਨ, ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਮਿਲੀ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਫਿਰ ਹੋਰ ਨੈਟਵਰਕ ਦਾ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ CBSA ਜੋ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਥ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਕੁਝ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ। ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ 450 ਕੇਸਿਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਇਨਵੈਸਟੀਗੇਸ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਜਾਰੀ ਰੱਖੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ 118 ਹੋਰ ਰੀਮੈਨ ਆਰਡਰ ਰਿਮੂਵਲ ਆਰਡਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੋੜਿਆ ਜਾਏਗਾ ਉਹ ਕੀਤੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਇੱਥੋਂ 50 ਤੋਂ ਉੱਪਰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਤੋਂ ਰਿਮੂਵ ਕੀਤੇ ਗਏ ਨੇ ਜਾਂ ਮੋੜੇ ਗਏ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਪਾਰਟਨਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਟਾਸਕ ਫੋਰਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈਗਾ। ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਸ ਮੁਲਕ ਦੀ ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਰੈਗੂਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਟੀਮ ਹੈਗੀ, ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਫਿਨਟਰੈਕ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਉਹ ਵੀ ਨਾਲ ਰਲੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਇਹ ਜੋ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਚੀਫਸ ਹਨ, ਇਹ ਹਰ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਆਪਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ, ਹਰ ਹਫਤੇ ਆਪਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਹਰ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਮੁਲਕ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਵੀ ਮਿਲੇ ਨੇ, ਹੁਣ ਇਸ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਐਡਮਿੰਟਨ 'ਚ ਮਿਲ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਆਪਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਬਦਲੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹਦਾ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਫਰਕ ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਸੋ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਇਸ ਜਨਵਰੀ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਫਰੌਤੀ ਕੇਸਿਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਘੱਟ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਨੇ। ਇਹਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਪਰ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਫਰਕ ਪੈ ਗਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ। ਤੇ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਸਾਡੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਤੇ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਵੀ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਚੀਫਸ ਹੈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਦਾਅਵਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਕਰੀ ਜਾਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਅੱਗਿਓਂ ਇਹੀ ਇੱਕ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਹੀ ਖੁਆਇਸ਼ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ, ਜੋ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ, ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਫਰੌਤੀ ਕੇਸ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਸੇ ਵੇਲੇ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਚੀਫ ਸਿੱਧੂ ਹੋਣੀ ਤੇ ਚੀਫ ਵਾਟਸਨ ਹੋਣੀ ਦੱਸ ਰਹੇ ਸਨ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਫਰੌਤੀ ਕੇਸਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੈਸੇ ਦੇ ਦੇਣੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਹੈ, ਜੋ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜ਼ਡ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਵੱਧਦੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹ ਘਟਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ। ਸੋ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੈਸੇ ਦਿੰਨੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਇਹਦਾ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਗਲਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਫੰਡਿੰਗ ਦੇਣੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਹੋਰ ਵਧੇ। ਸੋ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਪੈਸੇ ਦੇਣ ਨਾਲੋਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਫੋਰਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰੋ, ਇਹ ਕੰਪਲੇਂਟ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਾਰੀ ਉੱਥੇ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਕਰੋ, ਸੋ ਕਿ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਨਵੈਸਟੀਗੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਵੱਧ ਸਕੇ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਖਿਆਲ ਰੱਖ ਸਕਣ। ਆਪਣੇ ਚੀਫ ਲਿੰਬਿੰਸਕੀ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਿ ਸਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਸਾਰੇ ਥਾਵਾਂ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਸਿਰਫ ਇਨਵੈਸਟੀਗੇਸ਼ਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ, ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ। ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵਧੀਆ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਅਫਸਰ ਲਾਏ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸ਼ੂਟਿੰਗਸ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕੰਮ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਉੱਥੇ ਸਿਰਫ ਵਰਦੀ ਵਾਲੇ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਅਫਸਰ ਨਹੀਂ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਲੇਇੰਗ ਕਲੋਥ ਅਫਸਰ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਲਾਏ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ। ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਈ ਆਪਣੇ ਫਰੌਤੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਨਵੋਲਵ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹ ਇਹ ਗ੍ਰਿਫਤਾਰ ਵੀ ਹੋਏ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਹੀ ਹੈਗਾ ਨਿਊਜ਼ਪੇਪਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਗ੍ਰਿਫਤਾਰੀਆਂ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦੇਣਗੇ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਸੋ ਸਾਰੀ ਗੱਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਮੈਂ ਮੁਕਾਨਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਵਾਲ ਭੇਜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਇਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਹੀ ਸਵਾਲ ਭੇਜਦੇ ਰਹੋ। ਇਹ ਜੋ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਐਡਵਾਈਜ਼ਰੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਬਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, ਇਹਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਹੀ ਇਹੀ ਹੈ, ਇਹਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਹੀ ਇਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਜੋ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਫੋਰਸਿਸ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਰੱਖਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਜੋ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਅਪਡੇਟ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ। ਪੌਲ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਐਡਵਾਈਜ਼ਰੀ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਸਾਡੀ ਇਹੀ ਇੱਕ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀ ਹੈ, ਇਹੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਮੰਜ਼ਿਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜੋ ਫਰੌਤੀ ਕੇਸ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸੂਬਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਸਾਡੇ ਸ਼ਹਿਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਸਾਡੇ ਘਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਮੁਕਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਿਆਈਏ, ਇਹਨੂੰ ਹਟਾਈਏ। ਸੋ ਉਸ ਪੱਖੋਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਤੋਂ ਬਿਨਾਂ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਅੱਗੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਵਧਣਾ ਹੈਗਾ। ਸੋ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ। ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ ਪੌਲ ਨੂੰ ਮੁੜ ਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬੁਲਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਆਖਰੀ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝੇ ਕਰਨ। ਪੌਲ, back to you.
Thank you, Bultesh, for that. Well done. I'll end by thanking everyone. Harj, Dwayne, Norm, Colin, and Nina, sincere gratitude for supporting the community advisory group and for being here today and having open, honest conversations. Everyone have a good evening. Thank you.